What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 17. Top DFS picks.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for this week's NFL slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, NFL Week 17. Let's take a look at the quarterback position. So my top DFS pick at the quarterback position is Justin Fields from the Chicago Bears, playing the Detroit Lions, who have the worst defense overall. They give up the absolute most fantasy points defending opposing quarterbacks. Justin Fields has averaged 21.2 fantasy points per game on the season. He's getting an average of 10.7 rush attempts per game. He's projected at 19.2 fantasy points here in Week 17. He's $7,900 DraftKings salary, $500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 52 points scored in this game, with the Chicago Bears trailing by 5.5. Justin Fields has scored 10, 24, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 7, 15, and 6 rush attempts in those games. So fantastic matchup. I love the rushing upside. He is priced up this week, but I think for good reason. So I like Justin Fields here versus the Detroit Lions. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. My top DFS pick at the running back position is Saquon Barkley from the New York Giants, playing the Indianapolis Colts, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Saquon Barkley has averaged 19.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 18.9 rush attempts per game and 4.8 pass targets per game. He's projected at 16.8 fantasy points here in Week 17. He's $8,000 DraftKings salary, $1,200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, and they have the Giants trailing by 3.5. So Saquon Barkley has scored 27, 23, and 7 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 14, 18, and 9 rush attempts, on top of 10, 8, and 2 pass targets. So 18 pass targets the last 2 games. And remember, the Colts gave up 24 fantasy points to Austin Eckler. I think Saquon Barkley can score 20 fantasy points or more in this one. So I like Saquon Barkley here versus the Indianapolis Colts.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
And I think you also have to keep your eye on James Conner from the Arizona Cardinals, playing the Atlanta Falcons, who have the 5th worst defense overall, give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. James Conner has averaged 15.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 13.9 rush attempts per game and 4.6 pass targets per game. He's projected at 15 fantasy points here this week. He's $7,200 DraftKings salary, $800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 41 points scored in this game, with the Cardinals trailing by 3.5. James Conner has scored 25, 18, and 23 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 15, 16, and 15 rush attempts, on top of 8, 5, and 7 pass targets. So he's been involved in the passing game as well. Volume looks good. Production has been fantastic. It's a good matchup. So I like James Conner here versus the Atlanta Falcons. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. My top DFS pick at the wide receiver position is Keenan Allen from the LA Chargers, playing the LA Rams, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, middle-of-the-pack defending opposing wide receivers. Keenan Allen has averaged 15.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 9 pass targets per game. He's projected at 16.2 fantasy points here this week. He's 7,000 DraftKings salary, and Keenan Allen has scored 24, 17, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 14, 9, and 14 pass targets. So monster volume, monster production, and his price tag is still relatively low at only $7K on DraftKings. So I like Keenan Allen here versus the LA Rams. Okay, another wide receiver that I like is Jerry Jeudy from the Denver Broncos, playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the 8th worst defense overall. They give up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Jerry Jeudy has averaged 13.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.6 pass targets per game. He's projected at 13.3 fantasy points here this week. He's 6,400 DraftKings salary, 600 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45 points scored in this game, and they have the Broncos trailing by 13.5. So I like this pick because this should be a passing game script, and it's a good matchup. And Jerry Jeudy has scored 21, 15, and 33 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 10, 8, and 9 pass targets. So it looks like they got Courtland Sutton back. Courtland Sutton scored 11 fantasy points off of 7 pass targets, but that didn't hinder Jerry Jeudy with 21 fantasy points off of 10 pass targets. So I like Jerry Jeudy here versus the Kansas City Chiefs.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, moving on to the tight end position. My top DFS pick at the tight end position. I've got a few guys that I like here. Hard to pick my favorite. Let's just start with George Kittle from the San Francisco 49ers, playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who have the 7th worst defense overall. They give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. George Kittle has averaged 13.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.5 pass targets per game. He's projected at 11.7 fantasy points here this week. He's 5,900 DraftKings salary, 1,500 more on FanDuel. And George Kittle has scored 33, 25, and 7 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 8,
5 and 5 pass targets. So it looks like he is Brock Purdy's one of his favorite targets here. Fantastic performance the past 2 weeks. It's a good matchup. Price tag still relatively low. So I like George Kittle here versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Now I also like TJ Hawkinson from the Minnesota Vikings playing the Green Bay Packers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing tight ends. TJ Hawkinson has averaged 13.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.7 pass targets per game. He's projected at 10.9 fantasy points here this week, but I think he can score 14 fantasy points or more in this one. He's $5,400 DraftKings salary, $1,600 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 47 points scored in this game, with the Vikings trailing by 3.5. TJ Hawkinson has scored 39, 8, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 16, 9, and 8 pass targets. And I did mention this last week that even though the Minnesota Vikings have their playoff seed locked up, I thought they were going to continue to run TJ Hawkinson pretty hard, considering they picked him up midway through the season. So they want him to continue to learn the offense, run more routes, get more practice on the field. And they certainly did that last game with 16 pass targets. What a fantastic game. So I like TJ Hawkinson here versus the Green Bay Packers. Okay, and the last tight end that I like, sorry I gave you 3 picks here. I just can't pick one. I'd probably go with TJ Hawkinson if I had to pick one. But if you want to save some salary here, take a look at Evan Ingram from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Houston Texans, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing tight ends. Evan Ingram has averaged 11.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.1 pass targets per game. He's projected at 10.4 fantasy points this week, and he's only $4,400 DraftKings salary, $1,400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 43.5 points scored in this game, with the Jaguars favored by 4. So Evan Ingram has scored 21, 14, and 42 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, 10, and 15 pass targets. So I like Evan Ingram here versus the Houston Texans.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.